In today's video, we're going to boil down some sap and make some awesome maple syrup. Hey everyone, welcome back. I am Zach and this is the Ridgestead. If this is your first time here, we are a small family homestead on about 3 acres and we are doing our best to utilize our land that we have along with build it up best as possible to coexist with nature, kind of make it more nature friendly as possible. So with us being a smaller homestead, we only have about 3 to 4 maples that we can tap for sap. So we are only getting about 10 to 15 gallons a week, which is I'd say pretty good because we really don't go through the syrup a lot and we don't really plan on selling it, which I say about 10 to 15 gallons is pretty good, especially for the 2 trees that we only have taps. 1 tree has 2 taps in it. For today we're going to go over what we are doing for boiling and how we're going to finish this and bottle it. This is my second time doing it, so this is still kind of a learning process for me, but hopefully you guys can come learn with me. So items we're going over today. This is completely built out of cinder blocks. I filled all the sides with sand. I kind of got this idea off of someone else on YouTube and it works awesome. The single cinder blocks for the chimney has worked great. Started with cardboard, smaller twigs, build it up. I have some 2x4s in here that I have covered in paper that I can burn and it starts it up pretty easy. We have food grade buckets which I keep our sap in, and then I also have fine mesh funnel that I will take the sap if I was not able to put it through the funnel in the first place to put it into the bucket to clean it out before I put it into these pans. I have 2 of these. I could put a link in the description, but you can kind of see the line on there. So once you put these pans in, you fill them up about 3/4 of the way and you keep them there 3/4 of the way through the boil. And we'll go over that in a little bit. I have my torch to start and then I have my ladle and we will go over what I'm using that for later. So I built this up perfectly for these pans to sit right on top of the cinder blocks and block out most of the smoke coming up off the lip. There is a little bit of a lip up front, but I haven't had any problems with the syrup tasting too sappy because that will happen if your smoke gets into the sap. So going to start this fire and fill these up 3/4 of the way, and then we'll go over what I normally do next. Now that the fire is going and the pans are filled, basically now we just babysit. So the stove will pull the air through the front and with all that heat will go up the chimney. So this back pan is actually going to be our main boiling pan while the front pan will still boil. Not as hard though, it'll kind of be more of our heating up pan because the sap does take a bit to actually boil and the back pan will actually evaporate way faster than the front pan. So with the ladle, now I will take sap from that front pan and put it into the back pan. Once that back pan starts getting more evaporated and the level of the sap gets lower. So you keep adding to that back pan until you're finished with just a back pan filled of sap and you run out of sap to fill that front pan. Then after that you can filter it all out into a bucket again, or you can go put it into a stovetop pot where we will be finishing. Not sure if you can see it on camera, but this pan is now heating up and you can start to see the evaporation starting to happen. Almost looks like smoke coming off, and this is really ripping right now. I don't know if you can see on camera. So what I'm finding out is that the smaller sticks and logs about yay big are kind of the best. They burn a lot faster, they burn a lot hotter. Yeah, you have to tend to the fire a lot more, but I'm finding out that definitely gets a lot hotter and it actually makes a really good flame, which you can use drier, larger logs, but you really don't want any smoldering. You want a hot fire so it can get up to boiling. Getting real close to that boiling point. Now this thing is rolling and actually boiling pretty well, and now is the perfect time to actually babysit it because if this boils down too fast, which it can sometimes if you walk away for like 5-10 minutes, you'll start to burn. So a couple facts we'll go over real quick that are kind of cool is that most of this is water, so once you're boiling this, you're really evaporating just the water out and keeping the sugar, fructose, I'm pretty sure, and glucose. So if your sap has more glucose and fructose in it, I'll double check that. At least the glucose is that it will take longer to boil and it will actually be darker. So if you have less glucose and fructose, it will be lighter, and if you have more, it will be darker and it will take a bit longer. So that's something pretty cool. For boiling, this will get up to about 212 degrees. That is the boiling point for water at sea level. The finished product of this is 219, and we will go over that once we're on the stove top. A couple things to consider when you are building your own stove. You don't have to do this basically. You can get a professionally built stove. You can make your own. You could do it stovetop in your house and it takes a bit longer, but all this evaporation can actually leave a little film on your walls and it's sugary and sticky. So highly recommend doing something like this minimum, especially if you have about 15 gallons or 10 gallons or even 5. It's kind of a lot to sit boiling in your house all day. One thing with the cinder blocks is you might only get a season or two out of these due to the heat and cracking and everything like that. So it is a cheaper option, but another option you might have to replace later on. If I was to have more trees and do this more often, I would probably get a big evaporation pan. You can get some that are different tiers. Some of them are just a really, really big pan. And some of them have built-in stoves underneath where you can just put wood in. It's kind of made out of those steel drums, which are pretty cool. That is one thing to consider when you are doing this, is that you might have to replace stuff faster than you think. So really quick, I'm gonna start ladling this heated sap into this pan because you can kind of see the levels through this steam that this is evaporating way faster. Obviously it's boiling, but you can kind of see the little level right here that it is evaporating, and I will just keep putting more sap into here. Then I will go from the buckets over there, fill this up, let it heat up, and just keep going and going and going until I don't have any more to put in here, and we boil this down to where I can fit it into a stovetop pot. Another big important part is to make sure that your stove is level as possible, because you really don't want the sap just being high on one end, because you won't be able to fit as much either, and you might have some spilling problems or boiling over problems. So if all this foam is kind of a problem for you, you can kind of scoop it out, you can filter it out, or you can get some drops that they make that you can put into the sap that will get rid of these bubbles, or you can also run some butter around the rim and it will get rid of the bubbling, but I don't see any big problems with that. But that is actually some impurities that will get caught in the funnel once we filter this out into the stovetop pot. And yes, there is a bunch of stuff in the sap from outside, even after filtering, but I am going to filter this another 2 times at least. But this is what almost 15 gallons comes down to. This is the last of 15, almost 15 gallons, probably about 13 gallons. Main boiling pan is very dark compared to this heating pan. And once this heating pan is completely empty, I will fill it with water to keep it boiling so you don't burn the pan itself. And then I can clean it up pretty easy once that boils and gets all the other crud off of it that have actually burnt in there around the edges and whatnot. And then we will watch for this to boil down some more, where I can then take it and put it into a clean bucket and store it for tomorrow, where I will start the stovetop boil in the morning, so we have a longer day to finish the whole entire project with canning. Where if I were to probably keep doing this today, you'd probably be looking at about 7, 8 o'clock tonight, but we got some other stuff going on, so I'm gonna do it when it's more convenient. So with sap, you have about 7 to 10 days before it spoils. So I normally boil usually 10 days or so, maybe 9. So I can get a few more days and do it on the weekend. But once you boil it like this, you can actually store it again for a couple days if you needed to. It kind of resets the whole spoiling. It's technically kind of cooked because it is boiling and getting rid of all that bacteria and whatnot. But it can go bad if you don't take it to that finished product of syrup itself. So you can definitely make this more convenient for yourself. So now I am just filling up this bucket and filtering again. Since a lot of crap actually falls in here while I'm breaking sticks or coming off the trees. Actually, I saw a bee fly into one of these, so. Filter it again. Then after we do the boil on the stove top, we will filter it through a wool filter before we bottle. So this will be filtered a few more times. Now that our sap's boiled down to where I can fit it into a stovetop pot, I had to start it on low because this was completely cooled down overnight. If you were to start this out like you were boiling water, where you put it on medium or high, the whole entire sides and bottom of the sap are gonna completely burn. So you have to start out low and then gradually crank up your heat until you get to a boiling point. Right now, it's about 50 degrees, so I got a while. You're gonna be babysitting this if you do it this method. If you're able to take it inside right from boiling, you can speed this up by having it hot and ready to go. For stuff that I gotta use inside is candy thermometer. I 100% don't trust these because I noticed that with my digital thermometer that this was off about 5 degrees, which could totally ruin the syrup if that's the case. So once this kind of gets closer on the candy thermometer to my target area of 200 degrees, I will throw in my digital thermometer to babysit this until it gets to 219, which is the point that you will start testing your syrup for your thickness, your hydrometer, your Brix is technically called. I'm not 100% on what all the Brix means and all that. I mean, there's a lot more videos out there and people that are way more educated on this, but I'm just doing this for fun and for the family. So I do have a hydrometer. So once this reaches that 219, 7 degrees above boiling temp of water at ground level, like we talked about before. Once it hits 219, I take some out and I fill this up, and then I take out this hydrometer, put it in here, and it's actually marked where it's just about 60 Brix is the measurements that they measure out at. You put it in here, and then once it levels out, if it's below the brick number technically, so between 60 and 45, it will mean that you gotta cook it just a little bit longer, but it could be just a couple minutes. My last batch that I did, my first batch, I put it all back in, I boiled it again for maybe another 5 minutes, tested it again real quick, and then it was actually perfect at the 60 Brix. If you go below that 60 Brix to 65 and higher, you're gonna start having to add distilled water, which I hope I don't. You'll have to start adding distilled water, which I hope I don't have to because I don't have any currently. So we will be babysitting this for the next couple hours. We will keep you along with us and updated, and hopefully sooner we will have syrup to test out and filter out. So we are at about a 4-hour update. Still sitting at about 212 boiling. And you can see the sap went down probably a good almost 4 inches. And we probably got a couple more hours to go. So we are at about another hour in, and our temp is getting really close. Set a notification on our thermometer for 218, so it finishes a degree above where we need it to finish. So I can get over here in time to test it. You can kind of tell once it starts getting closer to being done and thicker that these boiling bubbles will pop up, and then they'll actually sit there for a bit before they're dispersing, unlike normal water where it's just rolling and popping bubbles. But yeah, you can see those sitting there taking longer to pop. Alright, so it keeps kind of peaking around 219 but then goes back down to 217. I just checked with the hydrometer and it was only about, what was it, just above probably 55. If you can see that, it was just above 55, right around there. So we got a little bit more cooking to do, and then we'll try it again in a couple minutes. All right, let's try this again real quick. It's definitely getting sticky though, and feeling like syrup. Still sitting at about 55. We're getting really, really close. Okay, let's try again. I did try this a few times already, and we're so close. Ooh. I think we're there. No, it's gonna be kind of hard to see that. That red line. So we are complete. Turning that heat off. I'm gonna clean this up. All right, so since our syrup is complete, I'm letting this cool down a little bit before we start filtering. So you want your syrup to cool down between 180 and 190. So once this hits 190, I will start filtering. I have a wool filter, a wool pre-filter, or it's like a wool filter that's called a pre-filter, but then you have these other interior filters that you will be running your syrup through. And then I kind of have this super clear mesh filter. This is what I use to actually filter the sap once I'm putting it in buckets and moving it around. You want to stack up a few of these pre-filters because they will clog eventually, and then you can pull them out, kind of squeeze them out, and then dump into the next one so you can keep going. And then this one will take a while, but what's nice about this one is that you can use it multiple times. You just have to clean it out thoroughly with hot water and just kind of like push everything out. So once this cools down, we will be filtering, and then once it's filtered, we will get it into some jars and we will be complete, and we'll have our syrup ready to go. Well, we just hit 190. We're gonna start filtering this. I'm really curious on how this wool filter is gonna do, because last time I did not use it. I used a couple of these thinner filters in my big mesh filter, and it turned out pretty good. But what's supposed to be awesome about the wool filter is the more that you filter it, it can give you a better clarity to your syrup. Let's see. Ooh, she's working. So we'll catch other minerals like niter or your sugar sand, which is the same thing, and that is made during the boiling process. But a nice, clean, clear syrup is really appealing also. It won't be gritty. I mean, if it's just for your family like this is, it won't complain too much. Won't really probably even tell. But if you were to start bottling, trying to sell, that's something you might want to consider, is getting some nicer filters like this. I wanted to because I want something that I can reuse over and over and over, along with maybe eventually I can start selling it at a farmer's market. So it's just something I wanted to upgrade right away. So you can see that there is a lot of sap in there still, or there's a lot of syrup in there still. So I wonder if these filters are kind of getting clogged up a bit. We're almost done. Just over a quart. Really dark, but it looks really, really clean. So we finished up with just under 1 quart, and now we're going to put them in some mason jars. And hopefully I don't spill. See, that's what I mean. Just a waste. Well, it's probably a quarter now. Boom. That's 1 jar complete. Depending on the kind of jars or bottles you're using, the bottle ones that have like the little peel top or the crack top, this is warm enough and you fill it up, basically tip it over, that syrup will hit this seal and completely seal it off and fresh. And if this stays warm, I might get a pop out of this and have it completely canned, but might be a little bit too cool for that. You can always stick it in a water bath and seal it up. That's awesome. Last jar. So making syrup, pretty simple if you kind of get the basic necessities for tapping, boiling, canning, checking to make sure the sap's done boiling and made syrup. Pretty easy, a lot of fun. It's basically just time consuming. So a lot of people might say that I'm not doing this right or doing that right, but what I am doing right is making good enough syrup for the kids and for the family, because they just ask for more. It's a lot of things I probably missed, a lot of stuff I'm still learning, but for my second time boiling sap, getting over a quart out of about 15 gallons of sap, it's pretty good for me. I'm really happy with that. It smells awesome. And that is the final product for boiling your sap into syrup. Beautiful.